And hi again, everybody. Welcome back to this special edition of Sports Talk as we do our Preakness preview. Doug Miles along with Don Henderson. Of course, our old friend Pete the Prophet joining us tonight as he does throughout racing season. And Pete, I know you and I did a bit of a recap after last week's Derby, and I guess everybody doing radio has done that. But before we get into this week's race, maybe we kind of do a bit of a follow-up on what's happened since then. I know the jockey that was on maximum security, he has been suspended for 15 riding days. Not that would matter for the Preakness because that horse isn't running, but how does it affect the race, if at all?
It doesn't really affect the race at all. Saez has been known to be a very aggressive rider. He's a very, he really can toe the line when it comes to being a little bit over the top with stuff. Definitely deserved days. I cannot believe it's 15 days. It's that's a lot for that, especially if it was a foul based on the fact that it was a crowd noise thing. But maybe his reputation stepped in and contributed to that. I'm sure he'll put a little inquiry in himself and maybe get it reduced a little bit, but doesn't really affect the race at all. And that's about that.
Pete, my big question to you is, the lead dog had to bow out of the Kentucky Derby, and it was sort of a wide open field. Everybody took a guess along the way. But aren't you a little disappointed that 1, 2 aren't running in the Preakness at all? I mean, if you want to reestablish yourself as a horse that should have won the Derby, wouldn't you come out and win the Preakness and say, well, I've got at least one down, and if I win the Belmont, I've got 2 down, and they took the Derby away.
Yeah, I think the problem with that is only that racing has just changed so much from 20 years ago that, if you don't have a chance at the big races, even though it's a big purse, they'd rather just freshen up. The money's no longer made on the track; it's really made in the breeding shed. So why risk injury? They're not really, there wasn't going to be any sort of rematch. And though he had that race over a barrel, he would have been the favorite. It would have been very, very tough to beat on that kind of track, and we would have had a shot at a Triple Crown. But it's interesting how it works because he ends up not running. Now, if he never would have wanted to run at the Belmont at 1.5 miles, you kind of have to if you win the first 2 legs. And
right.
Same thing with the country horse. He did not want to run in the Preakness, but would have had to have run in the Preakness because of winning the Derby. And no one wants to come back in 2 weeks anymore. So when you think of even a horse, running 3 races in 5 weeks, and 1.25 miles, 1 3/16, and 1.5 miles, you just don't. It's just not the way they run it. I think I think it's since 1951 or something. Was it a top 3 or top 4 horses that ran in the Derby and not running in the Preakness? That really shows you what this race is all about. Unfortunately, this year, and that disqualification had a really big rumbling across everything. So instead of getting a big interest in this race and putting horse racing on the map a little bit, there's nothing going on. And not that the stewards should look at that, but it does make quite a difference in everything: TV ratings, interest, and going forward. And Don, I didn't know what your thought was on the disqualification.
Well, I really thought it was legitimate, and I watched the entire replay from all positions. I thought they did an excellent job. I really have to say that. I thought NBC did a terrific job, and I think that all the officials took plenty of time to look. I thought it was a disqualification, but I also thought, as you just mentioned at the top of the show, I didn't think he'd get 15 days. Because, hey, listen, it was a sloppy day. There was a lot of, secondary information that you could have put into it. They made the decision, and I'll ride with it. I think it was the right decision.
Yeah, as Doug and I had talked about, I felt that I think it really depends on whether or not you think a penalty is a penalty, let's say in overtime, or
right.
You put the whistle away. And I guess it comes down to that, and that it's very hard to argue the fact that even I'll say that if that were any other race at any other time, it would have been a 2-minute disqual. They would have taken 2 minutes and taken that horse down. They did 22 minutes worth before a particular reason, and they did a lot of work afterwards. Boy, there's some great video of how, you know, it looks like the horse drifted out, but if you look at the video, and there's actually a big piece of water on the track that basically is, you know, perfectly right away from the rail. And if you see where the horse is going in and out before even that point, he was really drifting around during a lot of the race, and so he was really.
But Pete, don't you think it really looked like, if you could use post position, doesn't it really look like he went 1-3? I mean, it wasn't 1-2. You know, it wasn't 1 to the rail. I mean, he jumped out 2.5 spaces to 3.5. And I think one of the things that really hurt, and Doug may comment on this as well, when the secondary jockey said, "I could have been killed," I thought that was a major factor in not only that because they announced it even before the decision was made, that how the other jockeys were saying, "Oh, well, I could have been killed in this situation." I think that had an effect on it as well.
I think you're 100% right. I think that is a big part of it. It's interesting how, though, the horse that got the worst of the action didn't claim foul, and that was because they realized they couldn't move up to a position that would have given them any sort of money, so they decided to basically put the whistle away and go through it. And even before that particular point, I realized when you're looking at the replay, he was really running in and out, you know, and that's even before, and then after that, what he almost did and put the horse over the rail that came up on the inside. I mean, he moved in 3 or 4 positions at that point. So I don't question the reason for the foul. It's just in, you know, the race that everyone watches. You know, no one watches the Breeders' Cup. You're not sitting there watching the Breeders' Cup. As a casual fan, people are putting on that channel to watch it. And the horse that he fouled had every chance to win that race afterwards. He was within a length and just faltered. So, you know, either way, it's just a shame that now the Preakness basically is a higher level allowance race than it is anything else.
Before we get into the race this week, just to kind of wrap up on it, maximum security, of course, the owners contesting the race in the courts. Of course, that got thrown out, but I guess they're still going to pursue something. Pete, does that have any chance at all, or what are they still trying to do legally? I mean, there's no way they can overturn it. All the bets would have to be paid off, right? I mean, they couldn't even do that. So what's the deal with that? No,
you know, there's something that I've always thought about it in this situation where if you didn't think the horse affected any positioning of a horse, would it be okay to have left the horse up, let's say, in that case, but then the owners would have to have paid another horse money that if he would have been fifth, he would have been fourth, like would have done something like that, give him a piece of the purse. I don't think it should affect the betting in the race. It's a very hard thing. So often fouls are done on horses that don't have a chance, and again, you don't want it to really affect the bettor when a horse is already finished, but at the same time, you can't have jockeys just running, you know, roughshod out there as it is. And all that being said, this is just a crybaby going to work here. I mean, there's no way, if you reverse the situation, he's the first one screaming that horse should have come down. I mean, there's no question that he's just being a little baby about this stuff. He just wants he wants his thing, and it's just like what happened with the Belmont Stakes years ago when he complained that it's so ridiculous that all these horses don't run in all should there be a new rule. These people want to change the rules. And that's not racing. That's not what you're supposed to do in this sport. He has no shot at getting anything out of this except just, you know, kind of lowering his standard of an owner.
Pete, I think another thing is that as we look ahead to this weekend, heartbreaking may be a too severe term, but, you know, Pimlico's in all kinds of trouble. The track is in bad shape. They want to move it. And now they've got a race with nobody knows who's running.
and it really is just a race that people just go to drink in the infield at this point. There really isn't any particular reason, and this is the worst thing that could have happened to this track and what they're trying to do.
Right.
I mean, as it is, there's a piece of the grandstand, a couple of months ago was they're not allowed to, it was condemned. So there's a bunch of sections in the grandstand that there's no seating. So on top of that, they had that issue. They definitely want to move the race and probably will go over to Laurel. It's just the worst thing for the track in all. It's amazing how one decision, one moment of time, just has this ripple effect across everything going forward.
Didn't the state, Pete, have to pass some kind of legislation just to have Pimlico open for a very brief meeting? I don't know if it was last year or the year before, just to keep the race there, right? Maybe like a 3-week or 4-week meeting. I don't know if they did that this year.
They did it. I think they did it last year, where they ran. I think it might be a 2-week, maybe it's a 3-week meeting.
Yeah, very short.
3 or 4 days a week. Yeah, it's a very, very short, and that's it. So all the racing's done at Laurel as it is now, and it's very odd. Normally you see a horse that's run over the course, but now you're never going to see that, basically, because when a horse is going to go to Pimlico, if you look at all the entries for this race, no one has run at Pimlico before because there are no 2-year-old races at Pimlico. Basically, there are no 2-year-old races at Pimlico where a horse would then maybe come back later on and run as a 3-year-old. And the only time they're going to run as a 3-year-old would be in the Preakness. So you don't even have a race over the track. So it's a very weird meet that it's almost like a boutique meet. Just opens just for that purpose, which is another reason why, it really should move at this point. I don't know what they're going to do with the race itself, with the infield. I don't know much about Laurel. It's one track I have not been to, but it will affect a lot of things going forward.
Pete, I think the other thing is when you look at Pimlico, this may be the first step in getting rid of the Triple Crown. I mean, we may be in a situation now, as you indicated at the top of the show, that the owners don't want to run their horses over that short period of time over those 3 races. And there's been a lot of discussion in the last few years as to whether or not, we should consider this Triple Crown or move the times between the races to make it a Triple Crown. This may be a staggering blow for the Triple Crown racing.
It could be, as well as, don't forget, there is no guarantee that Belmont Stakes is going to be run at Belmont next year, the year after. So, I mean, imagine all of a sudden Kentucky to Laurel to Aqueduct to Saratoga. Where are they going to run the Belmont Stakes if this thing goes through and they're talking about maybe not racing there, or are they just going to open it just for a period? It affects a lot of things. You're 100% right that and now with the way animal people are getting involved in the horse racing, that's going to be a big part of it too, and that could change the whole effect on this. It is. I mean, I would think it would be awful to change that because of the fact is, though, that we've had so many chances of Triple Crowns over the years. So, but how hard it is, though, is supposed to be what greatness is all about. But you're right, Don. It definitely could have an effect down the road to where they try to spread this out a little bit.
Is that because of the construction on the hockey arena or other reasons?
Yes.
It is because of that. So if they do the construction, they can't have the race there? They wouldn't be able to do it?
Well, they can have the race. What they're talking about doing, first of all, as Don said when we talked about the Derby, there's still no shovel. There's not a shovel. There's not there's nothing going on over there, and I don't know when they're supposed to start. I mean, they should have things kind of ready to go. We're in mid-May, and what they're talking about, they still don't even know if they're coming back to Belmont for the fall meet. So what they might get done is the one part of the track where when they might just come back for a very similar boutique meet like what Pimlico is doing, and come back and race there for a week or two, and then leave. So they're going to need 1 year of not that they're going to probably not run a full meet in the spring of next year. They're going to probably do something to change that. So that's going to be a big factor in in what they're going to do going forward.
Well, they're going to continue to call it the second leg of the Triple Crown, but to be honest with you, this is really a high allowance race, and when you look at the TV ratings, I just think they're going to starve to death with the TV. I can't imagine that it's going to get a great rating when, racing has died across the country for the last 10, 15 years, and now you're asking somebody to look at a race that nobody knows anything about.
I can't even believe other than the fact that they're going to go through NBC is on there for whatever, 2.5, 3 hours. They're going to spend a lot of time on the Derby, but there isn't really any interesting stories here going forward. There's really no interesting horses. As you said, it's just a high-level allowance race for 3-year-olds. I don't know. There's so many celebrities you can talk to in the stands. There's almost so much features you can do on the race. I don't really know what they're going to do, and it's very sad because, the Preakness has at least had, over the last couple of years, some interest because it's always going to be something when there's a possibility of a horse winning and then maybe going into Belmont with a Triple Crown. This year, nothing at all, and not even the top 3 or 4 finishes running in the race. It's just it's really kind of depressing. It's certainly not much. The Preakness never really is much watch TV, but this year you don't even care. It'll be an afterthought.
Pete the Prophet joining us, Don Henderson, Doug Miles on our Preakness preview special. I guess we should just talk about at least some names people may know, at least trainer-wise, maybe some jockey names. Mike Smith back with Bob Baffert on Improbable. I guess that's the horse people kind of be looking at, right, Pete?
Yeah, that's the one that they're going to make the favorite, and in this race is going to be the one thing, too, about these races of the few that run in the slop, the Derby, and then even the Arkansas Derby run in the slop, you just throw those races out. They don't really mean anything at all. Improbable had great form before that. The one great thing about Improbable is that he also can sit a really perfect trip, and it's very rare that you can get a trainer like Bob Baffert basically saying that all 3 horses he ran got really bad rides. And when you're talking about Ortiz, one of the best riders in the country, that's saying a lot. So he puts his big money Mike on board. Horse will sit perfect. It'll be in a good spot. The horse that I really like in the race is the one breaking from the rail, Always Mining. It's a classic Maryland horse, has just been killing them out in Laurel. Perfect. Also, same sort of runner as Improbable. Can be on the lead, right off the lead, has been just destroying horses. Good final eighth of a mile times. Not that he's running Pimlico, but the Laurel track is similar to Pimlico in composition, and that's the one that I really like, and has a hometown jockey, Daniel Centeno, who'll know how to handle those tight turns.
And that's the other thing when you talk about Pimlico. That's really one of the keys because you're not going to go 5 wide at Pimlico when you're coming around the turns. You got to be in pretty good shape, and so it's going to be interesting to see a horse that gets out of the gate and comes up first or second. At the quarter pole may go all the way because it's very tough to overtake a horse at Pimlico.
Boy, you think about the races over the years, and even there's a misnomer about the Belmont Stakes that you need to be a coming behind horse. So often it's horses that have been up or around the pace. They're not really big closes. On this racetrack, the turns are so tight, it's impossible to make big giant closes because not only are you losing ground, but you're losing momentum. And then as you turn for home, you're spinning out in the middle of the racetrack. It's a very, very difficult track to make a close for, no matter how fast the fractions are. So it's got to be someone in close that pretty much narrows. With the Derby, you can pretty much go in Derby because maybe there are 10 horses with a chance to win. This race, there's only a handful, maybe 3 or 4 that have a shot just from positioning-wise. The deep closes, basically have no chance at all at winning this race.
D. Wayne Lucas, another name people remember as one of the all-time great trainers, does have a horse in the race. Market King doesn't really have a great record, right? 8 starts, only 1 win. So I don't know. He's in it. Any chance?
No.
Okay.
He's got,
that answers that.
He's got
Tell us how you really feel, Pete.
no, he's got no chance at all. 11th in the Bluegrass Stakes. He'll be a little early pace factor, but he just doesn't have what it takes. Wayne putting him in just to be in there, and he doesn't have a shot in this race whatsoever. And it's not going to rain, so we're not having any sloppy tracks either today. So sorry, Wayne, but you will be and also ran, no doubt about it.
Going back to the Derby for just a second, let's round it out. How much effect do you think the track had? Because I'll tell you, it took a lot of water. I mean, it really took a load of water.
The interesting thing about that race, and in general, if you know anything about sloppy tracks, the distance from first to last is usually gigantic. You don't get close finishes. They're always spread out. The winner will win by 2, second by 4. That was a very strange race because even though it took a ton of rain and you can see the puddles and everything there, and obviously caused a lot of problems, you don't see horses. It must have been a firm under bottom because you don't see horses that close on the far turn. To have
Not only that, Pete, but it didn't look to me, though, as you looked at the jockeys coming in, it didn't look to me, I mean, I thought they were going to be covered from head to foot with mud, but it didn't look and the goggles and all, I thought it was going to be terrible. It didn't look that bad.
Yeah, some of the ones that were way in the back, even the ones that were way back, were on the outside, so they really got nothing
right.
As it was. It was a very and kind of going to what you said about the Preakness and wide trips. You know, the Derby's also a jockey race, and that, you know, if you watch some of the trips that are going on in that race, I mean, some of these jockeys, I obviously don't understand, you know, the race. I mean, they were 8, 9, 10 wide. I mean, you can't win races from out there, and you know, to a certain point, that's a big factor in any racing, is where you are on the track. That Derby was such a sloppy mess, but yet it was closer. If you think of some of the sloppy races, you know, over the years, they're not that close. So there was something going on underneath, I believe, that kind of contributed to that close finish. And but again, you're not going to get any of that this year. So the Derby wasn't, and it's a shame that the Derby the last 3 years has been won by has been run in the slop. The race means nothing, and I think we talked about it. I cannot stand people that say that, well, everyone ran over the same surface. It doesn't mean anything whatsoever. It's just not horse racing when it's run over a sloppy track. The result means nothing whatsoever.
We'll wrap up our Preakness preview with your picks or what to look for Saturday. Any value out there?
You know, there really isn't any value out there. I'd love to say that there's some shot out there of somebody who can come up with a little something. I mean, maybe win at a price, but no, I really think this is going to be kind of a formful race. I'm very high on Always Mining, and I think he's going to be a decent price, but he's also getting a lot more talk than I would have hoped. So he's got a shot, you know, and it'll be really interesting, you know, if War of Will, you know, somehow comes and wins that race. It'll add to this whole Derby thing that, you know, maybe he would have shot in the Derby if he wasn't, you know, what happened to him. So it's interesting in that way, but I think it's going to be a very, very formful race and rather boring. Sorry to say.
But you know, I think they're like the NFL. We're talking parity now. Anybody can come from nowhere. There are no horses that are going to excel, and you may find a horse that you think is maybe the 7th on the board that comes in and wins the race.
You never know, and the one thing about the Preakness is that's when horses that are just kind of coming into their own, that are skipping the craziness of the Derby and to get into that race, they sit back and they run in a race that a lot of times is just, maybe it's a lower stake race. This is exactly what this is. It's just a lower stake race, and these horses are sitting back waiting. A lot of, back in the day when Pimlico ran a regular meet, it was open a good month or two before the race happened. And so you get a sharp 3-year-old that would just sit there and wait for these horses to come from the Derby at their home track. And again, horses for courses. It makes a gigantic difference if you had a race over the track and love a particular racetrack. And that's not going to happen this year since no one's ever run over Pimlico before.
Pete the Prophet joining us with Don Henderson, Doug Miles. We got about in our last 5 minutes. Let's switch gears, and we also like to talk a little hockey with Pete. He's a big hockey guy as well. You got the Final Four going on, although it looks like the Bruins are pretty much going to run with it as we do the show here on a Tuesday. And out in the West, St. Louis and San Jose, pretty evenly matched, but it could be a rematch of 1970, Boston and St. Louis in the finals.
How about that? Wouldn't that be a lot of fun to see that? Boston's looking. I don't know if Boston's looking that tough or is Carolina just that overmatched. It's really interesting thinking about the regular season, and I mean, just thinking about even the playoffs, how, in 4 straight, the Islanders beat Pittsburgh. And then in 4 straight, now Carolina beats the Islanders. And now we might have another 4 straight here. And the Islanders, to me, would have been so much a better competition for Boston. But this is why teams don't match up well against each other. And I don't like this matchup at all. And, boy, the goaltending, I mean, what do they do tonight? I mean, I guess they're going to go. If they didn't take him out the other night, I guess Carolina's going to leave in that goaltender.
I think when the Islanders took the grape out, I thought Lou handled it very, very well. I don't know if you saw the press conference on Monday after they were eliminated, or I don't know, Monday a couple of days after they were eliminated. Anyway, I thought he was very complimentary to all of the players and talked about the progress they had made. I mean, Lou's only been there less than a year. And to get to where he did from where he was is quite a job.
And classic Lou, he said that it was that his fault. He made a mistake standing pat. One of the things the Islanders have always had a problem with is goal scoring.
Right.
And they've gone out once in a while. They try to get a goal scorer, but they don't have the pieces around them. They had the pieces around him. He was very, he said going into the season he did not think much of his goaltending. He thought that was going to be a big problem, and the defense, and those two changed completely. But he took blame that he didn't get him. He thought this team was going to be good enough, and as you get in tougher rounds, a scrappy team like that just is hard to win. Even when the Rangers were in the Stanley Cup years ago, they didn't have the goal scoring that you need. You need that a couple of snipers, or it just can't all be about mucking. But the Islanders are in very good shape, going forward, and I'm sure he'll make a move. And more importantly, I think now you can probably attract a free agent or two where no one wanted to come now. They can wait a year or two and come out. It's still tough. Can the Islanders still attract someone right away, knowing that next year will probably be half and half in the 2 arenas, another year somewhere, I think, anyway. And I'm not. Do you know when are they saying they're going to open the new Coliseum?
Well, at least 2 years, right? It takes about a year and a half to build a thing. That's if they
do it
properly. And who knows? We all know New York is going to take longer than it should.
Yeah. So that could happen at any time. So the future is bright out here on the island. So it'll be fun. But I don't know what you guys think about this series right now. I don't know what a Boston-St. Louis thing or Boston. I mean, I don't know that. I'm just not getting the juice of this. How you guys feeling about it?
I'll tell you personally, I think Boston has played exceedingly well. I never expected that they would, and as you pointed out at the beginning of the show, unfortunately, the regular season doesn't mean anything. I mean, look at the teams that are now excelling in the playoffs, and they were middle of the pack. I mean, you're not talking about the Lightning went out in 4 games to start with. I mean, unbelievable what's going on in the National Hockey League.
It's incredible how the regular season basically means nothing. Even positioning home, nothing means anything. The regular season it just comes down to the playoffs and a team that get hot. Look at St. Louis and what they're doing, and it doesn't mean anything, and it's kind of disheartening. And with Tampa out of it off the bat and Washington out of it, we didn't get that Washington-Tampa battle. You might say there was a lot of battles you were hoping for, And these are probably the 4 teams that you would quite not, I mean, I'm not saying Boston, of course, San Jose, of course, but you're not expecting St. Louis, and you're certainly not thinking Carolina. And so it's amazing how the regular season has come down to mean so little.
Well, we'll see how that plays out. And Don, I don't know if you're heading out to the Bethpage at all. You got the PGA up there this week. You gonna be making the drive over?
Yeah, we'll see. No, I don't think so. They really are, though, getting a lot of pub. I mean, everybody has actually just the opposite of what we talk about in racing year after year now in the last maybe 5 or 8 years. I mean, they started doing the PGA 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And, I mean, every paper has, pages and pages and pages. And not just Tiger. I mean, they're all the way up and down. Daily, for instance, that story, can he use the card, can he not use the card?
Right.
I mean, they are really plugging the devil out of it.
Tiger.
Yeah, they really are.
Tiger gave Daly a shot. He said, I played with a broken leg. Did you see that?
I didn't see that.
He shouldn't have a card. I played with a broken leg. But Tiger filling his oats again.
Well, remember they went through that with the young man.
Casey Martin.
Just couldn't come out. They let him play once. He went to court.
Right.
And he did win. But I don't know that he ever played more than once or twice. But they wouldn't even let him, and he was actually crippled. And in Daly's case, I have to be honest with you, a guy that doesn't take care of himself, that creates all the problems he has, I don't think you make an exception for that kind of person.
I didn't even think they could do it because the PGA has rules. I mean, how is that a workers' disability thing? But that's what he went to court for. I guess they can do that. Obviously, they can. I mean, they forced the PGA to let him do it, right?
Yeah, I guess you can do the court for anything, and you can also, try to overturn the Kentucky Derby. So I guess while we're at it, we might as well, do everything while we're doing it. The one thing about golf is, I mean, in the last 5 years or so, have you ever seen the level, the amount of quality players? I mean, one after the other after the other. I mean, it's just an amazing field, and as a betting man, it always makes me laugh when you see someone's a 5-2 favorite or the 3-1 favorite to win. The 3-1 favorite. I mean, these guys, they play 30, 40 times in a year. They win 4 or 5 tournaments. That's 1 out of 10. I mean, what do you mean? I mean, the odds are ridiculous when we're talking about that. Anything goes with that. No, it's golf. It's incredible. So.
Well, look at how many times, Pete, that a non-winner has won. I mean, It's been the last 2 years. They've set all kinds of records because I think last year was 17 or 18 tournaments. Somebody that has never won. Yeah. That's it. It's like the regular season in hockey. Like, all right, doesn't really matter. Let's go play this match, and we'll win this. But it'll be fun. The bet plays Black is a very very, very hard course, and I'm looking forward to it. I really am looking forward to it because they played it the last time there, and it was sort of the first time, and I'm sure that they made a few adjustments to the course because they were so favorable with the first major tournament that they played there, and it came out so favorably, and in New York so favorably. I'm sure that they've dressed that course up a little bit more, and they are ready to go out there.
Well, one thing they have done, or one thing, I don't know if it's always been like this, I didn't think it was, but the pros are just raving about the course condition and how dry it has been with just a torrential amount of rain here from Sunday right on through today.
Right.
And they were out hitting yesterday, and how dry it was, and the drainage, and so that is insane. I mean, listen, they shut that course down, a week or two ago. All the courses at Bethpage, not just that one. All 5 of the courses they shut down 2 weeks ago, and it'll be closed for another week after this thing. So they have that in pristine shape, and it's ready to go. And I cannot wait for this weekend. And good weather. What do you know?
Well, all we can do is hope for the best. We've had a lot of bad weather. Let's get a few good days.
We're going to finally have it. Pete the Prophet's giving you the weather report, and the odds on that it's going to be sunny, fancy, firm. So get ready to roll.
I'd bet
anything
more.
over 24 hours, I don't trust you, Pete.
I'd bet more on your weather forecast than your horse picks in this race.
Stop it. The prophet, baby. The prophet. The prophet knows weather. The prophet knows weather.
We will wrap it up on that note. And Pete, the prophet, always great to have you with us. Depending on what happens in the Preakness, maybe we'll do a little post-race recap. If not, we'll definitely do something for the Belmont in 3 weeks. But we'll see what happens this Saturday.
Excellent, guys. Enjoy this great weekend.
Always a pleasure, partner. We'll look forward to getting you back with us again. Take care.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Don. Take care.